What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Cronos, The New Dawn, give you guys my full review. Sorry it took me so long, but we are here, and honestly, I got a lot of good things to say about this game. It was an interesting one, because this is really a game that I thought would be good, but you see the title, obviously this is a review, but this really was a horror game I wasn't maybe expecting it like this, or kind of like a horror game I didn't know I needed, in that way. So, firstly, before I get too far, I just want to say thank you to Bloober Team for giving me a review code. It didn't really help me beat it any faster than the average individual, but here we are, and I like this game quite a bit. I mean, look, you could see it leading into release. It gives off the vibes of Silent Hill, gave off the vibes of Dead Space, gave off the vibes of Resident Evil. You could look at even Callisto Protocol, whatever you want to say. The game just overall, I think, is a really, really nice game. There's not maybe anything too spectacular to say about it. I will say, I think when you're in it and these enemies are coming at you hot and heavy, it does feel very, very fun. I think mechanically, this game is extremely good. What's tough, I kind of want to just describe this game, okay, or how it comes across to me when I was playing it. This game really follows, I would say, the premise of a Resident Evil mixed with a Silent Hill game. Now, again, you can look at it, and I mean, it gives off Dead Space, obviously, at times as well. I think with a game like this, it builds. In the beginning of the game, you are on a linear path, and you tend to be on a linear path for most of this game. It opens up a little bit towards the end. There's more puzzles towards the end, but these are zones that you're in. You need to find a key, so you need to go somewhere, right? You fight your way through these enemies, you find the key, you backtrack, you open the door, and then you do the next thing that comes, right after that. Through this, you're going to be doing, smaller puzzles, at least to start. You're going to be doing some combat, and you're just going to, I think the vibes, okay? The atmosphere of this game are probably the game's strongest elements, okay? I think, the story takes a while, and it's both a pro and a con, because I think, the cutscenes are really good, I think. And I think it's hard, too, because your character, I actually think she's really, really cool, but at the same time, she's not used a lot until, oh my god, maybe like hour 6, 7, 8. You have to go through several hours before it really picks up. But I will say, I mean, that is maybe a con, but I really like the buildup of how mysterious she is. And I like the roboticness, if you listen to her or you're just watching her. So obviously, like, no facial expression. So that might hurt. But she's very much like this character that you almost make up your own story, at least in the beginning. Like, you kind of think, okay, what's going on here? You're trying to figure stuff out. I just like how she came across. I thought she was super intimidating, while also, like, the way she's kind of hollowed out in her speech patterns. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm explaining right, but I really liked her without even having much depth. And then when she got depth and, there's other characters. And by the way, that plays out very much like Silent Hill. I think that is probably, I mean, maybe it's a biasness, or maybe I'm thinking, okay, like Bloober Team, so I'm only comparing it to Silent Hill 2, but it really gives me the vibes of, like, you have an area, and you do, like, an hour and a half of stuff, and then you have this cutscene where there's, like, this pause, you open a door, and it transitions into this very story-heavy, cinematic thing, which very much, again, you think back to 1 year ago with Silent Hill 2, it's what they did, as well. And I mean, it's a staple, like, these games do it, but I think Silent Hill is probably, they do it more than maybe like a Resident Evil. Now, again, like, that's a pro-con. Like, I think when they do it, it's rather strong. And I think, again, they play around with, like, vagueness, and then it gets a little bit more, like, you understand it as the game goes. So that's maybe a pro. The con is, man, it is stretched out, especially in the beginning. There's not a lot of story. Now, I will say, okay, well, is that enough to make you stop? No, because the stuff that is in the beginning, I think, is that atmosphere. And it's that inadvertent storytelling. So I talk about this an okay amount. Look, I like stories that, like, tell it to me, okay? And maybe that's maybe my brain level or my intellect level is not all that high. But I do like to be told. But at the same time, I can respect games that do a lot of storytelling in writing or in context clues, stuff like that. I can appreciate those. I'm just, I don't maybe vibe with them as much as I would a different game. But let me tell you something. I actually really enjoyed this one. Because, again, while the in-your-face story is not there for, like, 70% of the game, what is there is everything else. The environment is rich. The amount of stuff that you pick up and you just read stories. I mean, some of the earliest stories kind of rock. I think you're very early on, like in the first hour, you're reading the story of this sickness, okay? And I believe like the dad gets sick and the kids are worried, and you kind of read throughout this story. Like I think the mom abandons them. The dad definitely like dies in a room, and it gets like freaking dark. Like it gets really, really good. And you read like 4 of these and you do it back to back to back to back, and it's like, okay, and that's right away. And you read those all the time. The game is constantly giving you context clues, kind of, I guess if that's what you call them, to kind of say, okay, here's what was going on in this area, or to add to like the larger lore. So, I think that really concludes, I guess, the story side of things. I want to move on to the other stuff, but I just kind of wanted to throw it out there. Like, if you're into like a direct storytelling, the game definitely doesn't have it as much. I think it's strong when it does it, but it's too spaced out. But honestly, I almost feel like there's a good flow to it, or a good balance, because I can get into the reading things and getting story through that. I mean, I got that a ton, and then when the game does pick up and does throw stuff at you through cutscenes, then you got that as well. So it's like a double whammy. Visually, the game is incredibly impressive. Like I said, atmosphere. I mean, I think the sound design is awesome. Just really, the monsters are very, very scary. At least in terms of how they sound. Look, you get used to them. Okay, in the beginning, they are terrifying, I will say. And I mean, they pull some stuff. They do some stuff that I believe like the medium did, and maybe even modern consoles, where they do like really quick like switches, like all of a sudden you see one thing and then something else pops up. They mess with that a little bit. I will say no gimmick ever lasts too long. I think the stuff that they try to do to make you scared jumps around quite a bit in a good way. And then naturally in the beginning of games like this, when you see these monsters, you're like, oh my dear God, you have a battle to be had there, and you're a little intimidated or scared. As you go, when an enemy pops up, it's like, all right, game on. Like I'm ready for you, because I've killed like 100 plus of these things. So I think that's a natural thing. But I think visually they nailed it. Sound design, they nailed it. Like I said, I think voice work, they did everybody, and even like I said, the main character, and even another character you talk to, has a mask, has kind of that filtering thing going on. I think they did that extremely, extremely well. Now, down this avenue, though, I want to talk about the game's only, I would say, major problem, okay? Like the story thing you could talk about. I don't think it's major. I think it's something you could definitely bring up. The one major thing with this game is the performance of the game. So I saw a lot of this leading in. I don't know what's going on. You have like Metal Gear. There was a lot of controversy regarding that game. Look, I'm playing this on a base PS5, okay? And I will say it doesn't run well. And again, we're in this situation where why can't we do this? Why are we doing this? Why are games struggling to perform? I saw one review, I think, on Twitter from someone who played on PS5 Pro, and they said there was like no issues. I mean, that's great, but I mean, I heard from a PC player that it was a big, big problem, and then I'm telling you on PS5, look, what it is, it's the frame rate. You could probably, I'm sure naturally, it happens kind of all the time. I almost get used to it, because it really, I think, is when you're running. Anytime you run, and by the way, it's not like you're not like doing this marathon, like it's a slow sprint, okay? But anytime you do it, anytime you're running and say you turn a corner or you move the camera basically too fast, there's gonna be a stutter. And there were a couple times where I almost felt like the game was about to give up on me. In fact, one time the game did give up on me. There was one time where I beat a boss, and then I was in a cutscene directly after the boss, and the game crashed. And then the saving in this game, it's survival horror, right? Not the easiest. You save, but you can't save like every 5 minutes, which, that's okay. But it's not okay when I beat a boss and then the game crashes after me, because guess what old Alex here on podcast now did? I had to redo that boss fight. So that made me extremely upset. So basically, to just summarize this, yeah, the game has performance problems, and I don't like that. It's insane to me that, you have to wait 2-3 months to get a game working at the level it should have worked day one for people that get it day one. So, I'm not here to make excuses for them. I'll say the positives where I feel there's positives, but I want to call out the negatives. It's unacceptable. And by the way, I was still playing it like last night. It's not like this lasted 24 hours and then they patched it right after. It's still happening. So they got to fix that. Okay, let's talk about pretty much anything else that there is. And there's really one major thing, which is gameplay. this is where I think the game really shines. I've seen like kind of mixed feelings on it, I would say, social media, but I loved it. I really, you kind of get in this groove. The game's hard. The game is so hard, I believe, at least the way I play it. And I go for headshots. I go for charge shots. I mean, we just made a video yesterday where I talked about some tips and tricks for people. I love it. I really do enjoy it. It's just difficult. I mean, I think every fight really is a fight for your freaking life. You know, you go into an arena, and I think the game balances it well. I'd say 95% of the time. Like, you kind of know the buildup. You know when they're going to throw a bunch of enemies towards you. You're going to be able to make it work. And there's a little bit of a exhale, afterwards. So you'll be in like an arena. You'll kill like 12 enemies, and you haven't breathed. You haven't like had one breath that entire time. And then all of a sudden, you as a player can just relax, right? You can say, okay, cool. And then as a character in the game, you say, okay, I used everything. And I mean, that happens. I mean, throughout the whole game, by the way, it gets easier in the sense that you know what you're doing. It gets easier in the sense that you understand how enemies attack, and you're able to kind of not dodge, but like space yourself out enough where you're not going to get hit as much. There's things that you learn as the game goes. But in terms of like resources, at least for me, I never really found it to get any massively easier. Again, I understood what I was doing more, but man, I would get into fights in the beginning, middle, and end of this game, and I would end it with like 3 shotgun shells left, and I'd say, okay, this is it. Thank God you don't have a fight after the big fight, right? So I think the game, honestly, it handles it really well, because I never felt, I don't think there was maybe any time. There was one time where I think I couldn't find a save point. So I had enough ammunition. Like if I got into a bind, I'd be able to fight myself, through it. But I didn't have anything to craft, so I couldn't do any health. And I also had no health. So I was running low on everything but bullets. And I had just done several major fights, I would say. And I couldn't find a save point. And I was terrified. Because again, this game is in a lot of ways unforgiving. You can die. You can lose 20 minutes of progress. And I mean, that's an okay amount of time. Like I don't really want to do those again. That's just the kind of gamer I am. So I was getting anxious where I was like, oh, when I make a turning the corner, I better not find one of those enemies that latch themselves to you, because I'm gonna take myself out, if that happens. So I was worried myself, and that was really the only time that happened. It was one time. I really think the game paces itself out well, and just the mechanics. I think it's really fun to take out these enemies, the let them merge thing. I think that I made a tips video again yesterday, and that's a little, I don't know, that one I don't think is as, it is cool, okay? It is cool. Like, if the enemy merges with another enemy, you have a serious problem, and I love that mechanic. The issue is I almost feel, of all of the things that are hard about combat, that's really not all that hard. I feel like if you just do, proper damage control, and you don't even have to burn bodies. If you're just, paying attention to these enemies before they merge, you can stop it. So I think it's a really cool mechanic, but to be honest with you, enemies merged maybe 7 times on me the entire game. It didn't happen often because I was always proactive about it. So it's a cool mechanic, but it didn't come up much because I was always trying to prevent it. So I loved it. I really would say that I love this game. And I'll tell you this, I thought this game was going to be good, but I didn't think, and I don't give numbers, and I understand maybe that can be a little frustrating because I'm throwing around words and not, if I was expecting a 7, let's say it was a 9, kind of like that. Now, I'm not giving it a number, right? But I would say I was expecting this to be a really solid, a really good game. I would say it was that level higher. I would say this is a great game. This was, Silent Hill F, it actually has to work pretty hard because, I could see a world where I like Cronos more than I like Silent Hill F, and I'm so freaking excited for Silent Hill F, but I think Cronos is that good, where it right now it's I think the best survival horror game I've played so far this year. Now maybe it's the only survival horror game, but there's others to come. They might not be able to match it. I think this game is a very well-rounded game. It feels like kind of the best of several games that you've played, while also being a little bit simplistic, because I don't think, the puzzles aren't as heavy as a Resident Evil or Silent Hill, and I kind of like that because I think it focused maybe more on combat than some of those games did. So I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed my time. I know people are saying okay, well, what's, or is this the best Bloober Team, original game? I don't think this is as good as Silent Hill 2 Remake. I guess I I would say that. Is this the best game they've ever made? I really like the Layers of Fear, like the first game. I thought that was a really good game. This is probably their best, though. It's a very different game, so it's probably unfair to compare them. But I probably would say that Cronos is easily the best game that they've made, like an original. And that's awesome. I'm super, super happy for them and can't wait to see what they make next beyond, let's say, Silent Hill 1 remake, right? I want to see kind of their next new game. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.